All right. So, welcome to Unraveling Success. I am so excited to welcome Carey Wallace as my guest today. Carey lives in beautiful Hilton Head, South Carolina. So, I think most of us are going to be very jealous of that. Carey has been married to her husband, Kevin, for 30 years. So, congratulations. They have two daughters, Morgan and Lindsay. And Carey is founder and CEO of AgencyFocus. So Carey is well known for doing insurance agency valuations, consulting, and also acts as a fractional CFO. So you have been in business for 3 years, although your previous occupations and careers have really teed you up for Agency Focus to turn into what it's turned into in the last 3 years. So you previously had acted as CFO to Ohio Insurance Agents Association and were the CEO of Intel Agents as well. So lots of valuable experience that led you to launch Agency Focus. So welcome.
Thank you, Beth. I am super excited to be here with you and to see you doing what you love. So, congratulations to you.
Thanks. Chatting with people
Yeah, exactly.
and connecting, like one of my favorite things ever. So let's jump right into it. And if you want to share with us what your definition of success is.
Yeah, I love this question because it's different for everyone, and actually for me, it's been different in so many different stages of my life. So, I think that part of feeling success is being willing to renegotiate what that is for you based on where you are. But if I had to get to the core of what success means for me, I think it's regardless of where I've been, whether I was a stay-at-home mom, whether I was a wife or, just newly married, it's about making an impact with the people around you. I think that's really the key to success. It's not acquiring things or achieving um, monetary things. It's more of a, what do people say when you leave the room, and what do you do when you're in the room to elevate it and leave it a better place than what it was before you got there. So I think for me, that's how I determine whether or not I have success is, am I able to leave something better than I found it and make an impact while I'm there?
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with you. One of the things I think we can both speak to this, that the stuff is so anticlimactic, and
Yeah.
it's really exciting when you're making an impact or lifting people up, or like I love when I was reading what you had written about, leaving the room better, no matter what, in if it's relationships and friendships, family, or in business, like just leaving things better when you leave.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
makes a difference. I guess how you make other people feel is way more impactful than the money they spend with you, the things that you know what I mean? It's more of a, did I did I make it better? Or did I actually bring the room down? Like, that's the biggest failure, is if you've actually brought the room down. So, and hey, listen, we're all human beings. So we've
Mhm.
all done that too. I've had my fair share of that situation, but I think it's more about what you do and the impact you have on whoever the people are around you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think you are so right when you point out, haven't you been in a room before where depending on who walks in it, they either lift up the energy in the room and everybody feels lighter and more energized, versus some people that walk in and you know, that either can, like, people want to shrink or kind of sucks the air out of the room just to,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good, yeah. I think we've all had both of those
And
experiences.
I
I don't
think if
think,
people walk through the world, everyone walk through the world with self-awareness to know which one you are. What a cool world that would be, right? You know?
it's so true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things I know about you that I really think is super neat is that when your girls were young, you stayed at home with them.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times there can be a fear around some women that have chose to stay home. First of all, I mean, the reason I started Aspire was because after 3 months of me trying to be a kind of stay at home mom, kind of build my book of business, was I realized how hard that was. And I was like, oh, this is funny that it's easier for me to build a book of business than it is to be with my kids full time. So props to you, because it is an amazing, like, it's an amazing thing to do, and that's also so hard. There's also, I think, a fear of women that have been outside of the workplace for however long, and then um, to re-enter the workforce, they feel like they're behind or maybe not legit. And this would go for men too. I would say anybody outside of the workplace. I think
Sure.
societally it has been more frequently to be the mom, but I see that changing a lot. So, talk to me about what that experience was like. And then when you re entered the workforce, because you have had great success in your career. I mean, you're at just such a beautiful point that many people look at and just are just in awe of, me included. But also when you realize how you prioritized family, and then like now how you've been able to see your career take off. So talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So when I had my children, I was working at a small startup, and we ended up. It was a technology startup right outside of DC, and we ended up taking that company public. And I loved it. I loved the work. I loved the people. I loved that it was something that you felt was yours. We all felt like that organization was our
Mm,
baby. I've actually never worked in an organization that I didn't feel like it was mine, like I was the owner, even though I'm not always the owner. But in that case, I was. You know, we had stock options. We treated it as if it was our own company, and it was. But I knew so we took it public. I worked there for another year, and now we are on the NASDAQ. We're filing publicly. My job got infinitely more difficult, more challenging now that you operate as a public company versus a private company. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I actually was interviewing to do it again. I wanted to be on an IPO team where I took companies public over and over and over again. But you can't do that and raise two children or raise any children. To be quite honest, I would have never been home. That really requires 16 to 18-hour days for months on end. The travel was 99%. I think that's what they were advertising. So you're just not home. But I loved the work, and
yeah,
I thought that's what I wanted to do. So there really was a choice of, okay, don't interview for that job and choose to stay in the company when the excitement for me was the building something. So,
mm,
I chose to stay home and figure out what I wanted to do. And, in hindsight, it was one of the best decisions I made. My first child ended up with some special needs, and I feel very fortunate that I was able to be there and advocate for her. Because I think
yeah.
had I stayed in a job, I would have then wondered, did I not do enough? Did I not think? I mean, like we all have
Mhm.
regret, and we all have, um, you all question your decisions, whether you stay home, whether you don't stay home. But I will tell you this, Beth,
For sure.
I remember um, I dreaded the question, what did you do all day? Like when I stayed home and someone asked me, what did you do all day? It was like, oh goodness, I'm not doing enough, but I'm raising two children, and now I catch myself asking someone that maybe is not working, well, what do you do with your time? And I think to myself, what a terrible question. But I remember thinking, I just never want to answer that question. It's a weird thing. You do like define yourself differently. But for me, success was becoming the best advocate that I could, becoming, um,
Yeah.
a hands-on person that exposed my kids to as many things as I possibly could to give them as many opportunities as I could. And I don't know that I would have
Mhm.
done that really well, trying to balance my professional ambition along with being a parent. So it was a tricky choice, but in hindsight, it was really the only choice for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that, especially with, um, especially with the special needs that is in front of you. It just calls for a different level
Yeah,
of like advocacy that isn't there without special needs, right?
right,
It's not as the advocacy isn't even quite as strong,
right,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
but
I have a lot of respect for your decision because it's, it also shows your priorities, right? Like that's one of the things that I look at when I do my weekly planning is I look back at my schedule and the week before and when I review monthly, I look back at it as like, are the priorities I say with my mouth, are they showing up on my calendar
mhm,
in the decisions that I'm making? Because that's actually like how I'm choosing to allocate my time is actually really where my priorities are, not what comes out of my mouth.
right,
So
yeah.
yeah,
But you asked me about when
that's
I
very
went back to work. So that was a tricky,
yeah.
tricky thing also, because I actually stayed home for 12 years. It wasn't like a 2-year stint. Like my girls were
Mhm.
going to middle school and I had worked, I had done things, I had volunteered. I had actually done some consulting during that time, but no full-time job during that 12-year period. And so you think
Mhm.
you don't have much to offer. It doesn't really matter that you were successful at one time, because success is different, right? Like what I
Yeah.
would say I did 12 years ago, well, the world moved really fast during that 12 years. And I remember interviewing for the job. I only went on one interview. It was with the it was actually with um, the PIA of Ohio, because they weren't merged yet. And they were
Okay.
3 miles from my house. It was a great situation that I could work while my kids were in school and really just get out of the house. It really wasn't meant to be a big job. In fact, I wanted it to be a really small job. And because here I
Mhm.
am, I've spent my time advocating for both of my kids. I'm involved in everything they've done. I've gone to everything that they do, and I didn't want that to change.
Mhm.
And that job got very big, very quick. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity that I had there. No question about it. I felt like a family. And again, I felt like
Mhm.
I don't know how to work for a company and not feel like an owner. I wasn't the CEO, but I was the closest thing you could get to that. And I, um, I really loved working there and I loved working with agents. But I remember when I first went back being terrified. Like, I don't know the rules of engagement. I don't know. Um, I just, things had changed enough that I wasn't sure what the dynamic was in the office. I wasn't sure. And so a big gap can give you a lot of doubts about what
Mhm.
your skill set is and your ability to adapt will be. But it ended up feeling like home pretty quickly. So yeah,
Good.
yeah,
That whole idea of being brave enough to be a beginner, but you weren't a beginner. It was like a re-beginner,
right, yeah.
like
It's like reinvent
yeah,
yourself, right?
restart. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so funny.
It is true with anything new. I mean, I remember, and this is on such a smaller scale, but I remember when I first even started learning to do yoga, just walking into the
I know.
studio with all these people that knew what everything was, and I'm like, falling over. But it's that being brave enough to be a beginner. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have one of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing to talk today was you have you've done a really good job of redefining what success is depending on the role and and like pivoting your at when like you've done a good job of the pivot.
Mhm.
And I find that, one of the things that I know you love to travel, and I know that new things energize you, and 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 I also am so fascinated because one of the areas in your business that's really growing is the fractional CFO area, and I also think of that, and I'm like, the really, most people, when they're thinking of like CPA, accountants, CFO, it's so linear and dry, and like they don't really like change very much, and they don't really like the curveballs, and pivots are a little bit of a challenge. And so it's kind of funny because when I was like writing things down and thinking, and I was like, oh my gosh, you are actually kind of a unicorn. Like you really embrace the change. You can get creative. You love the grassroots, but you're also like very data driven and very numbers focused. And that is such a rare combination. I remember when I was going through Goldman Sachs, their 10,000 small business program in 2019, and they did some like one like housekeeping module, but the second one was the financials. And I will tell you, I was terrified because we were actually in Boston, so we were in person. We had to bring our numbers, and I sat there because this has always been an area that really my confidence has not been the greatest in. It's since grown exponentially, but they said they started it by saying this: you are a group of CEOs. We're not going to try to turn you to a CFO, because we know that the most common thing that a CEO does is they put their head in the sand about the numbers. And
True.
I was like, they see me. They know that I run away from the numbers. And they said in there, we just want you to understand the numbers in a way where you can decision make off of them. We're not going to try to turn you into a CFO. And that was one of the most confidence building moments, because I realized like, oh, that's not weird. But you have both. And talk to me a little bit about just what that's like in your business, because I really think that's just such a superpower of you. And it has to allow you to connect with, a lot of the CEOs and owners that you're working with, but lend a different headspace that's probably deficit from a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I typically, first of all, thank you. That's probably one of the nicest compliments. But I really don't. It's so funny. I'm a financial person that doesn't identify as a financial person. Maybe if you could say that. Like I understand numbers. I'm very comfortable in numbers. I remember my first job. I had to do all of the accounting work because you wore every hat. So I was the controller for a period of time, and then I moved into the financial lead. Um, I did accounting to get to finance. I did the financial work you have to do to get to the analysis to actually see the story behind the numbers, which is where I live.
Mm,
So I think that is the power in I am almost as uncomfortable in the numbers as some CEOs are, because I really am more interested in what can we do with it? Like what can we
mhm,
create? What decisions can we drive to get you where you're going? And I think
mm,
it's why the fractional CFO part of my job is really growing significantly, because doing evaluation is fun. It gets me to a point in time with an agency to say, this is where you are today. But I have no interest in staying in where today is. It's always about where could we go, though? Like what else could we do
yeah,
to maximize it? So it that work literally lent itself to, okay, if you want to do those things and put those things in place, I can become the sounding board to help you navigate those decisions and create the agency value that you want, or create the agency trajectory that you want, by
mhm,
using the numbers as one of the parts of the story in order to get there. So, I guess
mhm,
I like that we don't just talk about numbers. You can talk to any of my clients, and honestly, it's probably the least amount that we talk about. It's more about goals and decisions and reallocation, and really prioritizing what's most important inside the agency, and using me as a sounding board to then make the numbers reflect what that is, and the
yeah,
impact of that. So, the numbers are just a tool. One of the best
Mm-hmm.
parts, I think, is one of the best compliments is you just don't seem like a numbers person, and I'm not. I'm truly um, a ideas person that uses the numbers to help
Yes.
you, and I think that also relaxes people that I'm not going to, talk in ratios, or I try to use financial
Mm-hmm.
terms as little as possible, with the exception of EBITDA, because I think everyone should know EBITDA. But there you go. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
I know EBITDA because of you.
I'm sure you do. You have no choice, right? You're my friend. So, yeah.
Yes, I know. That's what I talked to another agency. I'm like, but do you know your EBITDA?
Exactly. You need to know
I
that.
feel like I sound
Yeah.
so smart.
Everybody knows multiples. Nobody knows EBITDA. It's literally the other number in the equation. You should probably know both numbers, right?
Yes, yes, it's true. Yeah, I remember being really excited when I learned about that. So anyway, it's funny the things I get excited about now.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your journey between leaving Ohio
Mhm.
and the insurance agent association, and then launching, because you went from that to launching Agency
I did.
Focus,
Yes, I
correct?
did.
Share a little bit about just that journey and how Agency Focus started, because you're 3 years in, but you've made some also like very big waves in the industry, which has been one of the funnest things for me to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the journey from Intel agents and of the Ohio Association was not one that was planned at all. I think that's first and foremost. I thought I'd retire as the CEO of Intel agents, and I really wanted to influence and help agents use the data we had to make great decisions, to provide more insight than they had on their own. And unfortunately, that organization, the structure and the idea was amazing. The structure was a little off. And, maybe the timing was off. I don't know that agents were quite ready for what we were trying to do. I think that there's a lot of people trying to drive what a data driven organization is. And you got to be ready for it. It has to be the right time. But it also was built out of multiple associations coming together in order to aggregate their data. And you got to have a lot of trust among each other in order to do that, because the data was gathered by one of the largest revenue streams inside the association. So to be able to say,
Mhm.
I will release that to be anonymized and aggregated for the betterment of all agencies. We ended up with over 20,000 independent insurance agencies data in one place, which is pretty impressive. That's a
Wow.
very powerful
That's
thing.
so impressive.
But you got to have the
Mhm.
incredible trust with the organization, the infrastructure, that what's going to be done with that data. And that's true with any partner you have in any part of your life. And I don't know that that infrastructure was quite ready as well. So that
Mhm.
came to an end, and I really didn't know what I was going to do, to be quite honest with you. It was a pretty stressful end. There were
Mhm.
things out of my control that caused that to end. And it ended up
Mhm.
impacting my health. So I truly left because of health reasons, not necessarily because I was going towards something. And that was a period
Mhm.
of time that was really difficult for someone like me, that was very driven and had allowed my job to define a lot of who I was at the time. And so
Yeah.
it was people inside the industry reaching out saying, you have knowledge, you have experience, you have insights that we'd still like you to come speak on topics, even though I didn't have a home. I was, January
Yeah.
4th came around, everybody went back to work, and I didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, I didn't have email to check, I
Yeah.
didn't have anything. And it was really unnerving. And
I bet.
there were some people in the industry that said, hey, listen, we'd still like you to do a webinar and talk about valuation for agencies. And then another person called and said, are you still going to come in March and talk at our event? Right. And then, I had a couple people reach out and say, well, would you join our team? Would you do this? And I'm like, wow. Wow. It's not about where you work. It's who you are and the relationships you have.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
halfway through January, I picked a logo because I had a presentation and I thought, well, I better have a place for people to be able to reach out to me because it can't be a Gmail account. And honestly, they're the
Right.
reasons I have a business for no other reason, which is kind of cool. So those relationships saw something in me that I hadn't actually seen myself because I really thought people were
Yeah.
doing business with me because of the company I worked with, not necessarily
Mm.
who I am. And it's a pretty powerful realization.
Right. Well, it goes back to your definition of success is impacting and leaving things better.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it- it's it's so interesting too. I think as people, we don't see the things that other people see in us. I mean, it's just I think it's a common
Yeah.
blind spot, but that's what an awesome way to just like, you didn't, it happened for you because of who you are
Yeah. Yeah.
and the impact that you made previously. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
forever grateful to
that's
those people. And the cool thing is I've had the opportunity to tell each and every one of them the impact they've had on me. Because I don't
mhm,
think people realize what that means to another person. So, one of the people were the network is run by AJ Lovett and Nikki Toon, CAA. They're one of the first people that said, hey, we'd like you to present on this topic still. Marit Peters at
mhm.
IIAT, Aubie Knight at
He's great.
IIANC. Like they all just didn't hesitate and said, please come join us. Um, and then, David Carruthers had me speak to his entire
Mhm,
network. And he's like, what logo do I
mhm.
use? I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. And he's like, okay, we'll use no logo. It doesn't really matter. We'll just say it's Carey Wallace. Like it was super interesting. Some people I knew for a really long time. Some people I was just getting to know. And I'll tell you,
Mhm,
this industry opened. They literally welcomed me with open arms to start a business. And I
mhm.
thought, talk about defining success. I thought in my first year, if I can get 15 or 20 clients, I'll be great. And I had 15 clients within the first month. And it was like, oh goodness, like we need to put a seatbelt on here because this is
Yeah,
something, it was crazy.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well, and it's been like that since day one.
sure.
I mean, you probably need to have like one of the, 3-point harnesses, honestly.
I don't know about that, but yes, it has felt like I'm riding a horse at a full gallop for a while, which is nice. I
Yeah,
mean, what a gift. I've had people reach out to me and like,
yeah,
how do you grow a business? I'm like, I haven't gotten to the part where you have to do that yet. I'm still reacting, and I know
yeah,
that won't be that way forever, but I'm incredibly grateful for so many relationships that
yeah,
afforded me the luxury of being here. So yeah,
yeah. But I think you do know how, but it's your own how, which I think is
right,
much in the building of the relationships,
yeah,
and that's what you've been able to do. And also just the reality of having someone like you that doesn't identify as a numbers person, but still has the ability to do that and to pull numbers in together in a way also that you can articulate it to people where they understand. Like I remember when you were talking in Wisconsin at the Big Eye, and you were talking about numbers, but you just can relate them in a way that is so digestible. One of the things that you had said in there, and I've mentioned this to you before, was that it takes an average agency to get from 500,000 revenue to 1 million, 14 years. And I was like, oh, no way.
yeah. That's an
No
agency that's
way.
not acquiring. So if you're just growing at a
Yeah,
5% growth rate,
organically.
90% retention, that takes roughly 14 years to do. And I mean, it definitely motivates you to do something different than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, in that moment when you said that, I looked at Adam and I'm like, well, we're buying. Like, I was just like, because I have a lot of patience, but I don't have that patience.
Yeah, I know. It's
I'm
crazy.
not doing that.
But you
Yeah.
can't just spew numbers and statistics. You absolutely have to put it in a story that people understand. And I think that's what you mean. Like, that's something I can absolutely grab onto and say, hang on a minute. Is that really what I want my future to be? And if not, let's position ourselves to do it a different way, because there's more than one way to get to
Yes.
growth, right? There absolutely
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I re- you are absolutely correct, because in that moment I had just the most, it was a moment of such clarity. I mean, there was no middle ground. I was like, well, sounds like we'll be purchasing another agency,
Yeah.
because like I'm not waiting 14 years. So anyway, but that, I mean, just you make it so relatable. So talk to me a little bit about what has been, your biggest setback or failure. They can be two just different things, but that you feel like has propelled you forward the most, or what you've learned the most lessons from in your journey.
Um, so in my first job, I'll tell you one that stands out, and it's the one when someone interviews me and they ask about a failure that I always say. So we're in the middle of going through the IPO process, and we have our prospectus that we're writing, and I was responsible for the financial part of that prospectus, which is basically the entire document, with the exception of the lawyers that have to do this. And we had done several bits of analysis, and I realized, like, literally hours before it's going to go to print, and we are literally going on our road show, that the numbers were double counted. Because we had done analysis over and over and over again, I had missed it. And there was part of it that was going to be completely inaccurate if we didn't fix it. And having to go to my boss and say, hey, listen, we need to, like, hold the fort here because there's something really, really wrong. And it taught me, you have to slow down. You have to have double checks. This is a
Yeah.
team. It can't be one person. It's almost impossible to check your own work. And it's literally impacted how I run AgencyFocus today. So, like, if you work
Mhm.
with us, someone else reads your report, because there's no possible way you can find what you are trying to convey. It's impossible to find your own misses, because you are writing what you think you're going to read what you think you meant to write, not necessarily what the
Yes.
words are on the paper. But it just
Mhm.
reinforced the power of team, and the need to surround yourself and trust others to check your work, to make you better than you can be on your own. So it was one of the scariest days of my life. And luckily my boss, handled it beautifully. He was the CFO at the time. He's one of my best friends to this day, and someone I try to emulate him as a leader as much as I possibly can.
Mm.
And the second would be
Huge
Intel
compliment.
agents. The second would be that, the failure of Intel agents, everything that fails, there's a lot of reasons why. And it was,
Mm.
forging something new and different, and having to leverage a lot of trust and a lot of relationships inside the industry, and that not making it um, propelled me into what I'm in today. And,
Mhm.
being true to who you are and being true to what you say you're going to do. I think people saw that, which was great. But it was,
Yeah.
it'll forever shape my trajectory and my career. And I'm grateful that happened. It was probably one of the hardest things to go through, because you never want to see something you're building fail. But that failure
Yeah.
brought me far more success, and
Mhm.
in a way, I think, running a data analytics company was fantastic, no question about it. But running a consulting company that is exactly where I feel like my talents can help independent insurance agents has been a gift. So I'll
Yeah.
be forever grateful for that huge and public failure, because it put me where I am today.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the lessons learned in those situations are, you can't put a price tag on
No.
them, and the wisdom that is gleaned from failure in a way you can't learn it any other way. You can't learn it from a textbook. You can't learn it. I mean, even storytelling, like you can, but it's different when you actually live those,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when
Well,
I said I was going to leave Intel Agents, the reason I said was it impacted my health and I had to put my family first. And that was the other part of it. You have to be true to, am I truly at my best in this? And is it impacting the people around me and myself? And that one it was actually hurting my health in order to be there.
mhm.
So, but it's a hard thing. I mean, to have something actually negatively impact your health and that's the reason you leave is pretty significant, but
Mhm.
you have to put your family first, right?
You do. And also, like, if it's negatively affecting you, it negatively affects them. You
Absolutely.
can't have it, you just can't, because you can't work at your best. But it also tells you how much you pour into something, which is
Yes.
true.
True. Very true. Yes.
It is very true. What would you say if you were to talk to a brand new entrepreneur? What would you say your number one keys to success have been? What would you share with them?
If you're starting new, I would, number one, surround yourself with incredibly smart people. People want to support each other.
Mhm.
Um, Other entrepreneurs have been there. You can learn a great deal from other people who have forged a path. And in this industry, I mean, you literally have to try hard not to have other people want to pitch in and help you. So surround yourself with the right people
True.
and
Yeah.
be authentic. Be as authentic as you
Mhm.
possibly can. Don't try to be something that you're not. And those two things will take you very, very far, in my opinion.
Mhm. I 110% agree. And I echo what you say about the insurance industry in general. I haven't met,
Mm-mm.
like, it's amazing to me, the people in our industry and how willing they are to really, truly help other people. And I mean, it's just it's a really neat thing. And I honestly can say don't think that that would be expected. I don't think people outside of the insurance industry would anticipate that inside the industry there is that culture of wanting to help and lift up and champion the success of your peers. Like some of peers that I am close with that I help and enjoy are people that are within less than an hour
I
from me,
know.
which
It's crazy.
so many industries would be like, "That's your direct competition." I'm like, "Is it really?" Nah. The same person that's gonna be attracted to doing business with me is gonna be a different person that's attracted there's a different person that will be attracted
Yeah,
to doing business with them.
I agree. I think that the abundance mindset is super unique with a core group of agents and people in this industry. It is not a it's not a finite mindset. It is abundance. And if I make you better, our industry gets better, the impression of independent insurance agencies get better, and there's plenty of business to be had. I love
Yeah.
surrounding myself with people that have an abundance mentality because that's my attitude. I mean, listen, what I do, I'm not
Yes.
going to help 40,000 independent insurance agents. I would love to. I'm giving it my college try here, but I have
Yeah.
competitors and they're great people, and it's okay. So,
Mhm.
and I'm willing to reach out and help them and vice versa. And, I'll tell you, I was in a tech startup. There was no other tech startup reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, this is how you do it." That doesn't exist in that industry at all. In fact, they're very, very closed mouth and it's a very cutthroat situation. So it's interesting.
Mhm.
And I love that about this industry. No question about it.
Yeah, I do too. It's actually one of my favorite things. That's probably one of the big reasons why I stay too,
Yeah.
because I've been on the receiving side and I've been on like the giving side of it, and I love all of it.
I do
It's
too.
just amazing.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Carey, for being with me today. It was a pleasure chatting. You are always an inspiration to me. So if you are interested in connecting with Carey, all of her information is going to be in our show notes. And so you can connect with her on social. I'll have her email and URL and everything. So it makes it easy to click and connect. So thank you again, Carey.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Beth.